Hi everyone, I'm Dave Parker with Virginia Found. This is the Rappahannock River. It is thought by many to offer up some of the best oysters in the world. In fact, this entire region of Virginia is where you will find some of the best seafood ever. But while the area is populated by hard-working watermen, it is thought by many others as a place where you can relax and unwind. Today, Virginia Found is in Virginia's river realm. Ah, the countryside of Virginia. This is probably what comes to mind when you think of that. Quaint, small towns with welcoming white picket fences, the frequent sight of livestock, locally sourced restaurants, antique stores festooned with Civil War cannons out front. But that's not only what should come to mind in this part of Virginia. For generations, it's been known as the Northern Neck, but is now being rebranded as Virginia's river realm. Whatever you'd like to call it, geographically, it's that part of the Virginia coast between Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads. And it is here where you will find something very special. This is seafood country. If you live here or just visit for lunch, you're expecting any seafood that hits your plate to be right off the boat. There are very few containers here that say product of Vietnam. Being in this part of Virginia and not having an appreciation for the freshest of seafood is like living in Italy and getting your red sauce out of a can. Because this is seafood country,
we do this, and we do it much faster.
It's also waterman country. This is William. He makes a living doing something that most people either wouldn't or couldn't, even though they travel for miles to eat what he catches. He's a third-generation waterman and has been working these waters since he was 8. While he goes to a beautiful office, it can be a hard, long, and even dangerous workday, and he does it 12 months a year. He has to. Between regulations, competition, and the lasting effects of pollution, not many people here are getting rich. That's one of the reasons William agrees to take people like me, who are mad for mollusks, out on the Rappahannock River for a few special hours to do something I had heard of other people doing, but never thought I'd actually get the chance. All right, so we're here with William. William's about to take us out, and we're going to do some oyster harvesting. We get to taste the oysters out on the boat, right?
Yes.
Man, I can't wait. If you weren't doing this, if you weren't a waterman, what do you think you'd be doing in life?
If I weren't a waterman, I'd be a carpenter.
A carpenter. All right, still working with your hands, huh? What's the worst weather you've ever been out in this boat?
Last winter was the worst. We had several occasions where the boat was so rough. One time I had a sea come over the stern and put about 200 gallons of water in at one time, pulled it right down. And the worst time, the only time I've been scared yet, it was so rough and I kept pushing the limit, and the boat got rolled to the point where she was on a pinnacle, and she hit this point, and I didn't think she'd come back, but she did.
You ever get tired of eating oysters?
No, because when I get tired, I just stop.
For those of us who love oysters, this is almost a bucket list item. After a 30 to 45 minute boat ride, William dredges for the oysters, shucks them, and then you get to do this. Ooh, look at that. My dad would go crazy for this. No butter, no cocktail sauce, no shame. It doesn't look pretty, but it tastes awesome. This delicious culinary adventure is part of the Oyster Academy in Irvington. Before getting out on the water, there's an hour of class learning about how important oysters were to the local Native Americans, and then learning about the current tools of the trade. The classroom is in this place, the Tides Inn Resort, a 4-star restaurant in a town of about 450 people. Unsurprisingly, it's the largest hotel in the area. You'll find manicured landscaping, a beautiful beach with a marina, top-tier service, and lots of oysters on the menu. While there's a more formal dining room inside, it was outside at the Fish Hawk restaurant where we met acclaimed chef Pete Woods, who let us know there's a lot more to oysters than just eating them.
Now, what we're going to do today is we're going to shuck some of these oysters. These are beautiful oysters. They are the featured oyster here at Fish Hawk at the Tides Inn. And this is a Bay oyster. It's actually produced by one of our employees. And they're from right around the corner, 6 miles away from here on Annie-Poison Creek. Now, the beauty about oysters, they're not really that hard to open. Any oyster in the world, I don't care where it comes from, any oyster in the world, if you hold it with the point up, the muscle is at 7 o'clock. So they're actually kind of easy to open. Here's the deal. The reason the muscle is at 7 o'clock is because the oysters eat primarily from this side of the shell. So what they want to do is they want to contract that muscle and open the shell on the widest side, because the widest side is where they eat the most. So when you open them, just make sure you have a nice towel. You're good and steady. We're going to go right in through the lip here. Not too much pressure, not too hard. We're not going to strong arm it. You give it a twist and pop the shell open. Then you go in and just pivot that muscle right there. And then pull the shell. Bingo. And there you go. Geez, isn't that beautiful? There you go. Now, we also do this beautiful thing we call the Rappahannock roll here. And what we do is you roll the oyster over. A, it's completely cut off the muscle. And B, it gives you a really nice, puffy, fat oyster on top. I have plenty here. We've also roasted some. We do that here at the Tides Inn. These are a barbecued oyster. They are butter and bacon and barbecue sauce and hot sauce, and they are absolutely delicious.
Hey, the best part of hanging out with Chef Pete is getting to eat his food. You know, in this part of Virginia, there is a type of oyster for everyone. I love the raw oysters. But this roasted oyster, 3 minutes, 350 degrees. I mean, I don't know how you can beat that. That is absolutely delicious. Thank you, Chef Pete. Irvington is fairly typical of many of the small towns you'll find along this part of the Virginia coast. A variety of locally owned shops and restaurants, and the occasional farmer's market, many of which rely heavily on tourism. Because those tourists also like to get out and explore and relax, you'll also find windswept in Irvington. Owner Craig Dodson says he can physically see the transformation in visitors once they start enjoying the beauty of the area.
There's just something that happens that's almost transformational in terms of, you know, your disposition. Like everything just sort of, all the wrinkles get ironed out here. And it's slower, it's just, but in all the right ways. It's amazing seeing people come in and they will have just gotten to town like 30 minutes ago, checked in at the Hope and Glory, the Tides, or one of the Airbnbs, and by the time they're coming through my doors, life is good.
I don't think this is exactly what Craig was talking about. Here's something you'll be surprised to find in a town the size of Irvington: the Compass Entertainment Complex. Inside, they have 6 movie theaters, wall-to-wall video and arcade games, a ropes course, a restaurant, and more. Outside, there's go-karts and bumper cars, miniature golf, and a batting cage. I told you it was a lot of fun. And now for something geared a little more toward the adults. Some of the wine that was flowing back at the Tides Inn will come from the nearby and appropriately named Dog and Oyster Vineyard. I know, coastal Virginia doesn't come to mind for most wine enthusiasts, but maybe they've never been to the Dog and Oyster. With plate after plate of, you guessed it, local oysters, it may be a visit to a winery unlike any you've had. The Dog and Oyster prides itself on presenting wine that marries the soil with the nearby waters. It's something Dudley Pattison has been working on for a long time. When people think of coming to this area and wanting to eat here, it's going to be seafood. And part of that seafood, of course, is going to be the oyster. So I would think, how can we tie in the #1 food resource in this area with wine? And how have you done that?
We put it in our name. That's a good start. And then what we've done is on weekends and season, we pair our wines with oysters. We have a tasting room we call Sip. We have a oyster stand called Slurp. And when you come to the Dog and Oyster, you sip and slurp. And there's nothing better than to have local oysters paired with local wines.
Dudley, by the way, has been quite the entrepreneur in this small town because he also owns this gem in Irvington, the Hope and Glory Inn, a small boutique hotel that has been voted one of the 10 best in the entire country, and it's in this small town. But hold on, it gets better because the Hope and Glory Inn also has this person, Chef Meseret Crockett. Born in Ethiopia, she found herself in Irvington, Virginia, serving her own special flavor of food, which usually means a touch of heat, because that's how they do it in Ethiopia.
So what are we doing today?
So I'm going to prepare the oysters.
Okay.
We start, this is wild Rappahannock oysters.
Okay.
And I'm going to lay them like this.
Yeah.
Here I have homemade pesto. And I am going to put the pesto just like this.
Mm-hmm.
So I like kids.
Yes.
The food.
This is the Ethiopian in you.
Yes.
Right?
So I'm going to just a drop, one drop.
Okay.
And then I will finish with the Asiago cheese.
Asiago.
And
okay.
my pesto was made also with Asiago cheese.
Okay.
And what better way to follow a decadent oyster than with a decadent dessert? Chocolate cake over homemade creme fraiche, shaved white chocolate, fresh strawberries, all drizzled with chocolate liqueur and finished with fresh mint, and cognac.
That is delicious. Imagine having this after having the oysters that she cooked earlier with the heat and the Asiago cheese.
For something a little more casual, a 20 to 25 minute drive from Irvington will take you across the Rappahannock River to Urbana. You'll find yourself at the water's edge at the Urbana Seafood Market and Raw Bar. It may not look like much from the parking lot, but it sits right on the water, which means you can pull a boat up to the restaurant. As the name implies, you can buy your seafood in the market or enjoy it in the restaurant. Unless you're one of the few people here who doesn't like seafood.
Johnny, we met inside the seafood market there, and Johnny told me that even though he's from here, he really doesn't even care for seafood. Is that true?
True statement. Steak and potatoes.
Steak and potatoes. See, I said he's the one guy in town or going to that Mexican restaurant. They said, actually, it's pretty busy, isn't it?
It is pretty busy.
All right, so why don't you like seafood? And does that mean, do your friends give you a hard time about that?
Yeah, they used to growing up.
Uh-huh.
They got over it. As long as they got a cold beer, I'm good.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I mean, is it the texture, the taste? You don't have a shellfish allergy, do you?
No, it's just the texture of it. I just can't get by that.
So when you come to the Urbana Seafood Market, you're not getting the seafood.
I come for the cold beer and just sit around and relax. Good view.
And that is a good view, by the way. There it is.
If you're looking for an even better view, you can go from getting out on the water to getting out over it. In nearby Topping, Virginia, check out Coastal Sky Taxi.
Great flight, man.
Yeah, enjoyed it. That
All
was
right,
great.
check out Davey. The Coastal Sky Taxi was awesome.
There you go.
And now for a little history. Once upon a time, the Chesapeake Bay and its surrounding waters were plied by boats like these. They're called buy boats. Buy, as in they bought a waterman's catch out on the water to save the captain's time from having to motor back to the dock, unload, and then head back out. But times have not been kind to the buy boat captains. Once there were dozens, and now only one or two. That means these boats are mainly floating museums, They're refurbished and babied by a dedicated, unique group of individuals who get together once a year for tours, spend a lot of time eating and drinking, and answering questions.
If you grow up along the coast of Virginia, you hear about people buying boats all the time, but I had never heard of a buy boat. It is quite a story. I'm here with John. He is, can we call you the captain?
The captain of the Crockett.
The captain of the Crockett, the Crockett captain,
FD Crockett.
the FD Crockett. What does the FD stand for?
Ferdinand de Soto.
Okay, and
he's the guy that had the boat built in 1924. It's a log boat. It's actually built out of logs in the bottom, and it's the only really large historic log boat left in the state of Virginia.
now what is, if you're going to give somebody the elevator speech on what a buy boat is, what is a buy boat?
All right, a buy boat gets that name because these were the larger boats at the time, and this was, well, actually started probably around the turn of the last century, 1900.
Okay.
And these boats would be sent out maybe by the shucking houses or the crab house or whatever to go out to the fishing grounds where the smaller boats at that time couldn't easily get to the market. So
Right.
basically they would take the market to the fishermen.
Now, I find this kind of stuff fascinating. Actually, I find the people who are into this more fascinating, but I realize it's not for everyone. That's why any trip to Virginia's river realm may mean the need to get out of the car and walk around one of the bigger towns here, Kilmarnock. One of the biggest destinations in town is the Kilmarnock Antique Gallery. Just like most antique stores, it has all the usual knickknacks, from furniture to glassware, dolls, books, cards, collectibles, dogs. You know the drill. But since this is an antique store in Virginia's river realm, you'll also find these oyster plates. Lots and lots of oyster plates. And oyster cans. Lots and lots of oyster cans. And books to tell you about all those oyster plates and cans.
This is more of a man's collection, the oyster cans. There's some people that have hundreds of them.
Man cans.
Man cans, yeah, to go in the man cave.
One of the lodging highlights in town is the Kilmarnock Inn. This place is simply beautiful. Since Virginia is known as the presidential state, their 19 rooms are housed within several cottages that are named after U.S. presidents who were from Virginia. The restaurant serves breakfast and lunch and is open to the public. And don't miss the chance to spend some time in the spectacular courtyard. It is quite the oasis in this small town. Now, you may have the impression from earlier in this episode that everything in this part of Virginia is about oysters. Well, I need to show you something. 15 minutes from Kilmarnock is lively Virginia. There's a stoplight, an insurance agency, a bank, a Dollar General, a few other businesses and restaurants, but I was here for one reason: the world-famous Corner Bar and Grill. With a pinball machine and pool table in the back and absolutely no hint of finery, I knew I was in the right place. But what is it actually famous for?
Now I was told to come to the world-famous Corner Grill mainly for two reasons. One, coldest beer in town, they got that right, and their crab cake sandwiches, which by the looks of it is about the size of a small Frisbee. You talk about delicious. Almost no filler in that crab cake. My parents would love it. Connor, that was the best crab cake sandwich I've ever had, and that's saying a lot.
Thank you very much.
Why is it the best? What makes it so good?
Well, it's the love. That and a third of a pound of crab meat with no filler.
All right.
And that's just, well, Billy McCarty had this place years ago.
Yep.
And I asked him for his recipe when I got the place. And thankfully he gave it to me. And it's always been a hit.
there's not a whole lot in Lively except for somebody whose last name actually is Lively, and he's from Georgia. And so you came here just to compare your last name with the town itself, right?
It is. That's exactly right. I came out of Richmond to drive over here just to see what Lively, Virginia looked like.
What'd you think?
Actually, I like it. It is a nice little community, and we had a fantastic, delicious hamburger at the corner deli, beer joint, whatever you call it.
That's right.
Nice.
That's about as good as advertisements you can get.
Stop and eat here if you come through.
It was then time to check off one of the top TripAdvisor recommendations for this area, historic Christ Church in Irvington.
One of the must-sees here in Irvington is what you see behind me, and that is historic Christ Church. It dates back to the early 1700s. Everything inside that I'm about to show you in a second, everything inside, with the exception of the glass, is original to the early 1700s. It is just an absolutely beautiful piece of architecture.
If you're like me, it's hard to fully enjoy the sightseeing when there's another seafood restaurant just down the road. But we're heading to no ordinary seafood spot. This is Merwa, one of the most celebrated restaurants in Virginia. With scenic views of the water and oyster shells in the parking lot, you know what's about to happen.
The ham is very salty, so it'll be delicious.
Outstanding. Oh my God. Speechless.
This plate of deliciousness, this is called Angels on Horseback, and it is a grilled oyster with an herb butter and then a little piece of Edwards ham on top.
So whenever you have some travel destination, everybody wants to know what are the must-sees and what are the must-eats. Merwa has both of those because you have the great view here and just incredible food. What a great meal.
If you eat at enough restaurants in an area, you're going to find disappointment. But not today. Our last meal stop for our weekend in Virginia's River Realm took us to the award-winning Dredge in Irvington. Chef Brian Bird has called this area home since he was 8.
So you are from this area, which means you are serving seafood to a clientele that actually harvests that seafood.
Definitely.
That would seem like a pretty discerning, tough clientele.
It was, but I was raised by a local waterman, so, I was taught at an early age how to cook great seafood, especially our local seafood here. And it's definitely a compliment to have our locals and our huge local clientele come in and, eat our local seafood that they actually harvested. So, I have plenty of local watermen that are coming in and they're eating the actual oysters that they harvested for themselves.
That's cool. Speaking of which, what are we cooking today?
Today we're cooking some seared sea scallops with red grouper. One of my favorites from the Keys. I lived in the Keys for 5 years.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things that I also brought back with me to Irvington was Caribbean influence. And so that's what, we do rockfish and things like that.
Yep.
But I also love to give, a piece of the Keys to the people back here at home.
Man, I can't wait to see how you do it. Let's go.
Awesome.
Brian starts this dish by dredging the scallops and grouper in a wash of blackening seasoning, a little salt and pepper, and olive oil. Now he likes to cook the fish on cast iron to give it a good sear. His burners are set to low, so it's low and slow, but the cook time does depend on the thickness of your fillet. This one's about 8 ounces, which takes him about 10 minutes.
U10 sea scallops from Wanchese, North Carolina.
And look at the size of these scallops. These are U10, so some of the biggest you'll find.
What's the key to cooking a good scallop?
Don't flip too early, because you won't have that nice sear on the sides. This has been on for maybe a minute and a half, close to 2 minutes. You don't want to sear it too much, so I'm going to give it a nice flip. Look at that perfect blacken. So it's not overcooked, it's not over blackened. Blackening, is not just a seasoning, it's the way of cooking it on the cast iron.
In keeping with his traditional Caribbean style, Brian likes to pair these fruits of the sea with black beans and rice, and
one of my favorites from the islands is a little fresh mango salsa.
when you come to Dredge, come hungry. This plate is one serving.
When you first cut into a piece of fish, to know it's properly prepared, what are you looking for?
I'm looking for the juice to run out, you know, especially when you're searing it that way. The way, you know, especially blackening, you're searing and you're locking in that flavor. Kind of like fried, but it's, you know, a lot healthier for you. Fried, you know, you're locking in that great moisture and flavor of the fish. And this is the same way with the blackened.
Brian, thank you so much for
Cheers.
a delicious plate.
Thanks for coming by.
Thank you. That's pretty, isn't it? You know, it's hard to get a true, complete feel for an area from watching a cooking show or a travel show. But I can tell you what to generally expect when you come to this part of Virginia, Virginia's river realm, or the Northern Neck. And that is accommodations and restaurants that will surprise you, scenery that is beautiful, and the freshest of seafood. For Virginia Found, I'm Dave Parker.